Welcome, everybody, back to the Blue Stable Podcast. It has been a wild one here in the last week. The Colts did lose their week one opener, but that's not the end of the season, right? It's not a one-game season, at least for a lot of people. The Colts did lose, but they have another AFC South division game this weekend in Houston, taking on the Houston Texans. But before we get to all the good stuff, all right, I got to talk to my guys here. Landon, Marcus, especially you, Landon. It's been quite a week, huh?
Well, I mean, the week's been fine. It's really been more about like 24 hours or so. It's been an interesting 24 hours for sure. But
right.
I mean, yeah, it's been a good week. Can't complain. Actually,
yeah, bro. How dare you disrespect Jake Funk of all people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't meant towards Jake Funk, which
I thought it was pretty obvious in the tweet.
So let's just address this real quick. So the post that I made about Jonathan Taylor hitting the hole, I didn't even mention Jake Funk in the initial tweet. The only time I did, I mean, somebody asked who the running back was, and I said that, but all I said was his name. I didn't disparage him at all. I thought it was pretty obvious that I was literally just talking about Jonathan Taylor. It had nothing to do with Jake Funk. He did absolutely nothing wrong on the play. Really, what it was alluding to is whenever you just have special players like Jonathan Taylor, 90% of running backs do exactly what Jake Funk did there, which is perfectly fine. That's how you're supposed to read the linebackers. You're supposed to draw them into the double team. I get that. But the tweet was about Jonathan Taylor and just how much of a special player he is and how generally when he has those type of running lanes, he's just so explosive and so quick that he just turns that into, I'm not even saying like he would have went for a touchdown. I'm not even saying he would house it, but more often than not, that turns into an explosive play. And that's really kind of what they were missing. So that's really what the initial post was. It had nothing to do with Jake Funk. It was not disparaging. I actually appreciate him, quote tweeting it and explaining the process of it. I love to hear from players like that. It's always fantastic. I could have done a better job of clarifying. I thought I did whenever I didn't mention Jake Funk at all in the initial tweet. I literally said Jonathan Taylor, but that's my bad on that. But where I do draw the line, this is part of a larger issue with social media and all this stuff. But, I can handle, everybody under the comments calling me a clown and telling me that I shouldn't watch football anymore and I'm an idiot and all that stuff. That stuff's kind of whatever to me. But I did actually have somebody messaged me late last night. It was overnight, that telling me that I should kill myself. And that's something that I hold very dear as far as like suicide prevention and stuff. I've had family that have died from suicide. I know it affects a lot of people. I mean, I wear this band, this Kicking the Stigma band here for that reason. And it's never cool to go after players or anybody. I mean, even people you don't like. I mean, that should just never be an option for you to message them and tell them stuff like that. So with that being said, it's water under the bridge. Nothing wrong with what Jake Funk said. I didn't think there's anything wrong with what I said. Did think it was a little funny. There were some people under there after Jake Funk's post that didn't say anything on my post, but once Jake Funk said something, then they, they come in and chime in and back him up. That's a little comical, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Water under the bridge. Everything's fine. But I am going to be taking a break from social media just from receiving some of those posts. Not going anywhere. Everything's perfectly fine with me. But after, talking with my wife this morning, she kind of said, look, whenever it starts getting to that point to where people are sending you those type of messages, it's time to unplug, time to let everything die down. People have probably already forgotten about the post. You know how social media is. They'll move on to the next person in 10 minutes. But yeah, just for me personally, just going to be unplugging for a little while. You probably won't see many tweets from me going forward here for just a little while. But yeah, I'm still around, still be here on the show, still be here to talk with you guys, still be able to give my thoughts on football. Whether you guys want to hear them or not, I'm still going to be here, giving my thoughts and all that, still studying tape and doing all the fun stuff. So that's me addressing the issue. It's over with now. Everything's good. Ready to talk about the Texans.
The man, dude. All that is just Dumb. It's dumb. It's dumb. And again, when you say you could have done a better job clarifying, I don't know how much more you can get better at clarifying. Like common sense just isn't that common anymore. But
Well, I guess I should have just like broken it down step by step on everything.
yeah, like
It's
kindergarten class, put it on the board and
yeah,
context clues
yeah.
and take
I
care of
give
that stuff. And
sometimes I
hey,
do. I give people too much credit sometimes.
hey, bro, it's those high character traits that Chris Ballard looks for, man. Defend yourself on Twitter, even though nothing
No,
was bad
that's what I'm
about
saying. I
you.
don't have any problem with what Jake said. That was
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that.
which is why I didn't understand why he even
I
responded.
Well, no,
Like,
I agree. So I agree with actually what he did, and like I
mhm.
get it because so many people under the comments were tagging him and calling him out and telling him how awful he was, and that's just not cool to do to players in general. Like, I mean, these guys, like, I respect the fact that like these guys sacrifice so much. I mean, they're like Jake Funk, regardless on what you think of him on the Colts, he's still an NFL running back, and he's one of the top players at his position in the world. So, yeah, I have no problem with him quote tweeting it, especially because some of the flack. And I apologize if I caused any flack to him on his part. That's what I'm saying is it had nothing to do with Jake Funk, which I thought I made obvious. Apparently, I did not. Um, and people just really took that and ran with it, which is really unfortunate for him. It's really unfortunate for me. It's really unfortunate for Colts Twitter, which I try to make a positive place and try to keep everything positive. But I know sometimes on social media that's just an impossible task. So yeah, it is what it is. Like I said, water under the bridge. No ill will towards anybody. Um, Moving on, and I'm excited for Anthony Richardson. I'm excited for the Houston Texans, and ready to get to talk to you guys.
Let's go, bro. Let's move on. Hopefully, Jake Funk can be more active on Sunday than he is on Twitter. So let's go ahead and talk about it this week, okay? Now, hey, Anthony Richardson versus CJ Stroud. Earlier this summer, really, before the schedule came out, I talked about how I wanted, like, I was dying for this to be for week one opponent. NFL didn't listen, but they said, hey, we'll do you one better. We'll save it for week two. After you've already seen what CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson can do. Both of them came out of their week one games 0-1. So it's going to be level playing field in Houston. So I want to open it up to you guys. First off, just y'all's thoughts about the Houston Texans. Marcus, let's start with you.
I think it's kind of crazy. First of all, I'll say what's up, guys. But I think it's interesting to look at the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts because they're almost in the same scenario. When you look at the offense and the defensive side, they both have young quarterbacks. Offense is changing, and they both have star-studded defenses that could pretty much carry the team into a victory if needed. And you kind of seen that last week with the Houston Texans. If anyone watched that game, they put up a good fight on the defensive side. They got a young edge rush, and it's pretty good. They got some promising players, some good defensive talent as well. And on the offensive side, you've seen some struggles, but you see promise as well. And I feel like you can do the same thing with the Indianapolis Colts. So I think it's a very interesting matchup. I think the Houston Texans got a good future ahead of them. They got them a franchise quarterback. The run game could be better, but they got a decent receiving group. And like I said, the defense is really, really underrated. And they got a decent pass rush. So I think it's going to be a good matchup for sure.
Yeah, it's a team like they're clearly in a rebuild right now. I mean, they went young. They got Will Anderson, who just looked like an absolute stud last week. He looked fantastic. It's really unfortunate about their offensive line. I believe they're down 3 starters already going into week one. Guys that they invested a lot in. Second round center. I think they had a first round guard. They paid a bunch of money to their right tackle as well to come in, and all those guys are out for I believe for the season. If I'm not, correct me, but it's prolonged period of time, and so it's really unfortunate. CJ Stroud now having to deal with that situation there. But yeah, it's a good offense. It's a good offensive scheme, very similar to what Kyle Shanahan runs. In that kind of a same mold, and I think there's a lot of room for growth. Their weapons leave a lot to be desired outside of, I think Nico Collins is good. Tank Dell's on the team. They talked about getting him more involved. I think he has some really good talent, but Yeah, it's just a team, clearly in a rebuild. I think they're a little bit less talented than the Colts are in some areas, but it should be a fun game.
All right, let's start getting to the breakdown, guys. So, Landon and Marcus, let's start with you guys. All right. What do you want to see the Colts offense build on after last week? Landon, let's start with you.
Yeah, really. They looked good as far as controlling the tempo, getting into the right sets, getting Richardson a lot of easy reads, really, making his life easy on those, first reads, RPOs, that pistol formation, throwing to areas he's comfortable throwing to. Really only saw a couple of mistakes in the game, from him. And that's big for sure. So I would really love to see them now kind of convert more on those third and fourth down calls. Like that's really like the next evolution for this offense is situational football. And that's really where they need to grow. So that's something that I'm looking forward to this week to see how efficient and effective they are on these third down. Are they getting into third and longs, or are they able on first and second down to get, manageable distance? Are they able to get first downs, or are they able to at least make it third and manageable, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, that kind of thing. That way, because I know it was a little bit hard last week because of the lack of the running game. They got stuck in a lot of third and long situations. And I mean, that's tough in the NFL. You never want to be in third and long. And so you really saw that play out. They weren't able to maintain control and maintain these long sustained drives and give their defense a chance to catch their breath. And in the fourth quarter, you kind of saw that defense finally break.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point there on the third and fourth downs because that was very pivotal last week, man. I feel like, we all can say the defense pretty much gave it their all last week, and there was just times when the offense just consistently let them down, and the defense wound up getting gassed. But you mentioned third and fourth down. I gotta pivot to the run game for sure because I think that's very important for this offense moving forward. And it's in a very tricky situation. A lot of Colts fans want them to go sign somebody out of free agency for the run game, but this is a big week for Jake Funk. I've been campaigning for him to, get more snaps moving forward because we've seen how last week struggled with the run game. I feel like if you switch it up, just give somebody else a shot and see what the run game looks like when you put them in there. Maybe you might get a different look, and maybe they might be the fit for the scheme moving forward. So this is a big week for the run game. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to work because if we can get any type of balance on that offense, we can be very good, and a lot of record predictions can start to change if we can see some type of structure with the run game. And that just starts with the blocking, and I'm pretty sure one of us is going to mention that moving forward. But the run blocking has to be very important, and it has to be on point for that to work. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the run game.
So after last week, one of the bigger issues was getting your best players involved, aka Michael Pittman Jr. Going into halftime, Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce accounted for combined one target. One target. That cannot happen. Yes, Michael Pittman Jr. ended up having what was it, 11 targets at the end of the game, 8 catches, 90 plus receiving yards. That was okay in the second half. But that can't happen anymore. You can't have your best player on offense go one target. You can't have it. So, Landon, if you were Shane Steichen on Sunday, how are you utilizing getting Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce the ball early?
Well, really, it's just, I actually think like they did a good job of it against Jacksonville. It was just more of, where the defense dictated the targets go. They did a great job, I think, of bracketing Pierce early and really kind of forcing Alec Pierce, forcing those long completions away, playing those two high safeties, playing that shell coverage. They did a really great job of really forcing that check down and forcing those underneath and short passes. And that's something Anthony Richardson struggled with in college, which we all thought he would struggle with. And he was the most accurate quarterback last week in the entire NFL on passes from 1 to 10 yards. So what a change that is. A lot of optimism moving forward there. But I think it's just, you just have to keep the concerted effort going. I think they could switch it up a little bit, maybe run more mesh concepts, maybe run, those quick RPO slants, that kind of stuff that they did, and get, Michael Pittman the ball more on like, crossers, and Alec Pierce that ball. I mean, that tunnel screen, to Michael Pierce, I thought that, or Michael Pittman. I thought that was a fantastic call. And I would just like to see more of that stuff really, really take shape. But in reality, I'm sorry this has kind of got long-winded here, but it's really up to the run game to get those guys more involved, if we're being honest, because once that run game gets going, maybe you bring those two high safeties, it forces that safety down, and it gives you more one-on-one coverage, more where you can take those deep shots to Alec Pierce, where you can, run those posts with Michael Pittman and run more of these, tunnel screens and, crossers and stuff like that. So, I thought they had a good game plan to get them involved. I thought just the lack of a run game and the way the defense played last week in Jacksonville, it just kind of predicated, those guys not getting the ball, which was a good game plan on Jacksonville's part.
Another issue last week was kind of the offensive line, whether in some instances it was the pass blocking, and in most instances it was the run blocking. So we're going to get into the blocking right now. Marcus, this one's for me and you right here. Is it too early to be panicked about the offensive line?
I would say yes. It's only week 1. Well, now it's week 2 now, but I do think it's a little early to think that way because, I mean, you can't really get your true answer on how the offensive line is going to look until like at least week 5 to 6. I think week 6 is like a definite answer. Like, okay, this is the issue. But moving forward, I did think the offensive line shown some type of promise, especially when we mentioned the RPO scheme and getting those quick passes out, and it kind of covers up your real issues. I mean, but no offensive line is 100%. You're going to have some hits and misses, but I think the offensive line does better in pass protection than run protection. So, I mean, that's what they really got to improve on is run blocking. And that's just going to be the biggest test this week to see if it's going to be a real issue moving forward. So I do think they did show some bright signs moving forward, but we'll see. And definitely when it comes to, the injuries, we got to look forward to that too, because you're seeing Quentin Nelson on the list. We've seen some big pieces on the injury list, and moving forward, if that's going to be one of the issues, then yes, I will agree with you. But right now, I think it's a little too early to start thinking that way.
I think after the game, I was more panicked than I am now, because during the game, it just never occurred to me that, damn, the Jaguars have 2 top 10 rushers, one of them being a former number 1 overall pick, as their pass rushers. Like that just like, wow. So I agree. It's only week 1, and we might look back on this game and Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen might combine for 25 sacks. And we'll look back on it and say, damn, the Colts actually did pretty good. They did pretty good against that tandem. So it's week 1. They probably are a very promising duo. Probably the next, dare I say, Mathis-Freeney combination in the AFC. No, don't kill me, Colts fans. I know we don't want to combine or compare those to Colts, but I think it is too early right now because, again, even though there were some really rough patches by some guys, you got to look back at by the time we get to week 10, you got to look back and say, okay, where is that tandem now? Where's Allen and Walker now? Where's their depth pieces now? What is their front 7 or their front 4 rather? Where are they now? How much are they the best pressure rate unit? Are they up there in sacks? Are they up there in quarterback hits? Where are they at? So I'm going to agree with you there. Landon, should we be worried about DeMeco Ryans' pass rushing attack?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Will Anderson looked like a stud last week, and he looked like a stud in the preseason. So, I mean, for all the flack that they caught for giving up those assets to trade up and get him, he looks like he's going to be a player. And, there wasn't really any doubt about that from most people. But, yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have a young quarterback, and especially with Quentin Nelson's health going forward, we'll see what that looks like if he's playing. But because of the depth on this team, it's rough. So if Quentin Nelson's not in there, yeah, that's a big worry. So you should always be worried about pass rush. That can really affect and really throw off, your entire offense. And we saw that last year play out quite a bit, just how these rookie quarterbacks and really just this offense right now, these quick RPOs and all this, it really relies on a lot of timing and, rhythm type of plays where, Anthony Richardson's hitting his, his drop and, balls coming out and, he's got to make quick decisions. And we really saw that last week. So anytime there's pressure on a play, it'll throw off the rhythm. It'll throw off that. And luckily, Anthony Richardson's, absolutely fantastic as far as avoiding sacks and getting out and creating on the run and making it really difficult for defenses and defensive lines. So that's definitely a positive. But yeah, you should always be worried about pass rush.
I definitely am, because even though DeMeco Ryans is the head coach and he is implementing his defensive philosophy, Matt Burke is going to be the play caller on defense, and he comes over from Arizona, former defensive line coach, but still him and DeMeco Ryans see defense the same. Last year, or in his time in San Francisco, when he would dial up blitzes when he needed to, man, they were creative. They were very creative. They were well-timed. And, of course, it's on the play of the linebackers to really disguise it and execute. Do they have linebackers that are like Fred Warner? Probably not, if we're being honest.
I don't know, there's many linebackers, if any, that are like
right. Right. Maybe one or two.
One.
Yeah, but it's also easy to say for DeMeco Ryans, you don't necessarily have to bring blitzes when you got guys like Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Samson Ebukam, who was in San Francisco the last couple of years. When you got Javon Kinlaw, when you got those guys, you don't have to bring as many blitzes. But going back and watching the game against Baltimore, now, yeah, Anthony Richardson does pretty well, did solid last week. Lamar Jackson is quicker than Anthony Richardson. Lamar Jackson is faster than Anthony Richardson, and he was getting pressured from Houston. They were dialing up some really good blitzes. Lamar Jackson was sacked 4 times, and they got to him. To one, I believe, was Christian Harris. One of them was on the play. One of them was Will Anderson. I believe the other one, I know 2 linebackers got to him at 2 different points in the game. So the fact that these blitzes are going to be coming, and they got a good test in Lamar Jackson week 1, especially heading into a contest with Anthony Richardson. Now he's a rookie. He's not as experienced as Lamar Jackson, hasn't seen that many defenses and defensive looks in the NFL as Lamar Jackson. What are they going to do? What are they going to throw at Anthony Richardson, especially if you've seen some weaknesses, Will Fries, on the offensive line? What are you going to do? How are you going to attack those weaknesses and get Anthony Richardson off his game? I'm worried about it, honestly. Yeah, they got some guys, Will Anderson, they got Malik Collins, they got Sheldon Rankins, who's been promising. They got the vet Jerry Hughes. Got to give a shout out to my boy Dylan Horn from TCU. He's on the 2 deep. They have those guys there. So can they make some pressure? Can they free up the linebackers? Landon, I think you wanted to get something in.
Yeah, just like as far as like something too that like kind of concerns me, and this is even going back towards with Steichen in Philadelphia was kind of an issue, is just really the hot routes, like not having those answers built in for those plays where they do bring pressure. And we kind of saw that last week with Richardson. There were a few plays where, those linebackers come through and they're right in his face. And, luckily he is creative enough to where he can make things happen. But you'd really like to have, those hot routes, kind of built in, giving your quarterback some relief there. So that's something, if they do decide to bring pressure, that's something I'll be watching closely to see if they have those answers for those blitzes and those kind of pressures. And if they're able to implement those hot routes into their offense.
So, Marcus, talking about the Colts defense, should the Colts defense be feeling confident heading into Houston, and why?
Well, absolutely. One, because of week 1, I think that's a great start for your defense to carry the momentum going into next week. Also, knowing that the offensive line for the Houston Texans is banged up, this could be a good advantage for the defense to have another good week. And who loves that more than us, right? Because we love to see the defense go out there and play. Plus, it's Gus Bradley. He's experienced. He's been here already. That we know we're familiar with the scheme, and we got players that's coming back. And I think they all played really well last week. So I think this week could be another good week for them. And I think, maybe this could be another big game for Kwity Paye. Like I said, so I think this is a good week for them to bounce back and have another good week. Maybe we might see a Julian Blackmon interception. You don't drop the ball. I did say it was slippery last week, so maybe they don't get a wet football this week. So. But I do think this is a good one for them to have another good game just due to pure injuries for the Houston Texans, which isn't fair for them. But hey, we don't make the rules.
Right. I think the secondary for the Colts should possibly be feeling, better because, again, you probably won't see a Calvin Ridley this week. Maybe. I don't want to get caught in 4K, but Nico Collins, he's solid. 6 for 80 last week. He was solid. I really liked him coming out of Michigan, and he showed some really good potential, and he's obviously doing some good with that. They also got John Mechie, who did not play last week. We'll see if he's able to go this week. But I think the defense is going to be very confident heading into Sunday and possibly coming out of Sunday because that front seven, I'm not sure if the Texans are going to be able to run the ball on them. I don't know. Again, hopefully I don't get caught in 4K. Hopefully not. But I trust DeForest Buckner, who got off to a great start last week in trying to get first-team All-Pro. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Samson Ebukam, Kwity Paye. That's a pretty stout run defense right there, defensive line in general, because Samson Ebukam, I mean, again, that's why he was a very, very huge upgrade over Yannick Ngakoue, because Yannick Ngakoue was a liability in run defense last year, and he was a liability there. And also, he wasn't as consistent pressuring the quarterback as Samson Ebukam is. So that's my thing when it comes to the defense, because, again, you got that flying missile back there, Zaire Franklin, the leader of the defense, the voice, the energy. We do anticipate Shaquille Leonard taking that title back when he gets his legs back under him. But in his absence, Zaire Franklin is here. Ziggy is here, and he is on fire. So, Landon and Marcus, what player should Colts fans be worried about on the Texans offense? Marcus, let's start with you.
Well, I just want to say thank goodness that Brandon Cooks is no longer in Houston, because that would have been my answer, because Brandon Cooks is so unstoppable, bro. But now that he's gone, I think Nico Collins is definitely going to step into that role and be used a lot for CJ Stroud. I think that can be a very interesting duo moving forward. But I do think Nico can definitely have himself a good game if he happens to get off at any moment. So he could be the guy to watch. I'm pretty sure Landon might have the guy that I second guessed, but I wanted to save him for him. But I do think Nico Collins could definitely be a solid, player going into this week if he happens to get open at any moment, because he can ball, man. He's a good baller. Definitely one of those guys.
Yeah, well, actually, Nico Collins was the guy I was going to choose. But just for different purposes, I mean, honestly, it's CJ Stroud. That should be the guy that they should be worried about on offense. It's the quarterback. This is a quarterback's league. That's the guy you got to deal with, throwing the ball, handing the ball off. They've done a fantastic job last week, playing Trevor Lawrence, who I think is now comfortably going to ascend into that, top 5, quarterback conversation. He made some absolutely ridiculous throws. I mean, throws that generally have no chance of being caught. He was sticking them. So it'll be interesting now to see if they can bring that type of intensity and pressure and apply that to CJ Stroud, because that's something that the Colts have, or, CJ Stroud has kind of struggled with even going back in college, outside of the Georgia game, is, whenever he is under pressure, he does tend to make some mistakes. So this is a quarterback's league, and that's the guy you should worry about, bar none, is the quarterback. You got to get him on the ground. You got to make him uncomfortable. You got to make him make mistakes. He's a rookie. You got to bait him a little bit into making some throws that he doesn't really want to make. And I think if they can make him uncomfortable, I think they have a good chance in this game.
Whoa, does Landon think everybody else on the Texans suck? Man, watch Tank Dell go for like 8 for 120 against us. God dang it, freaking Landon. But
hey,
okay,
pile on. I'm accepting all criticism.
Right, he's accepting all the criticism right now.
Everybody just keep on coming.
Hey man, that's good stuff. Now let's head on over to the 3 things the Colts need to do to make sure they come out of Sunday with a win. We're going to go in this order: Landon, Marcus, and then finish with myself, and then we'll head into predictions. But before we do that, if you have not already, make sure you are liking and subscribing the Blue Stable on YouTube. Make sure you are following, downloading us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also, if you are a first-time visitor of Home Field Apparel, make sure you go over there, get you a bomber jacket with 2006 Super Bowl champions on there. Maybe get you a fleece hoodie. Maybe get you a T-shirt, some joggers, some nice if you want to sleep in something comfortable, get those as well. Head on over to Home Field Apparel, go to their Colts site and get whatever you want, and then use the code Blue Stable, one word, all capitalized, Blue Stable, to get 15% off your final price. That's over at Home Field Apparel. Go check it out. Now, 3 things the Colts need to do to come out of Sunday with the win.
Well, first thing I'm going to highlight something I highlighted earlier, and that's situational football. That's being able to get in third and manageable, convert third downs, keep these drives sustained and long, and keep your defense off the field, keep them fresh. So whenever they do play, whenever you're deep into the fourth quarter, if you're in another hard-fought game, these guys are ready to go, and they're ready to get after CJ Stroud. They're ready to get after this, Texans offense. So that's really going to be my main thing to be watching this week, is just how efficient they are in these, in the red zone, on third downs, on fourth downs, because I assume Shane Steichen's going to continue to be aggressive, continue to go for it, which I absolutely love, by the way. I have zero issues in that, in him being aggressive. So, yeah, I think if they can just make those third downs manageable, make these drives a little bit more sustained, and make sure to capitalize in the red zone, I think they have a really good shot this week.
I agree. The whole thing about being aggressive is that you got to convert. And one of those things is, if you're going to be aggressive and run the ball, you got to actually get it done. And running the ball is definitely a point that I made earlier, but I got to keep making, because, I banged the anvil for Jake Funk to start this whole campaign since the season started. I love Deion Jackson. I mentioned him before, but I was like, you know what? It's time for Jake Funk. It is, and it really is. And I think this could be his game. And if we can get any type of production out the run game, we can get a Michael Pittman Jr. game. We can get an Alec Pierce game. We can get an Anthony Richardson explosion. All of these things can happen, but it has to start with some type of structure in the run game. And I think the run game is very important moving into this week, because if we don't have any type of things coming out of the run, Anthony Richardson is going to be in for a long week. And that pass rush for Houston Texans is going to be hungry. So I think we got to get something to come out that run game, so we can get some type of balance on this offense, and to keep the defense off the field too, man. We got to get something going in the run game.
Man, those are 2 really good points right there. I'm really setting myself up for failure with this one. But I'm going to roll with it, and I'm going to explain why. My third reason is going to be disguise blitzes and coverages make CJ Stroud think. Why on earth is Michael telling an NFL quarterback to think? Well, go back to what was CJ Stroud's biggest problem at Ohio State. After the first read was taken away, what would he do? Couldn't necessarily figure it out, especially one of the top things that was discussed in the pre-draft when it came to CJ Stroud. Of course, it's always easy to make that first read when you got guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka, and then the year prior, Garrett Wilson, and all those guys. It's easy to get that first read. Chris Olave. I don't know how I didn't even name him. But a loaded team. A loaded team. He showed a little bit in Baltimore, even though he did have a strong game. But this is Gus Bradley he's facing. Love me some Gus Bradley. Like what he's able to do. Shaq Leonard has another game under his belt. Try to get his legs under him. I want to see Gus Bradley try to confuse CJ Stroud and buy the defensive line more time to get home to him. That's what I want to see. I think that's what the Colts have to do. Again, CJ Stroud might come out and boom, and I'll take the blame if the Colts lose this game for that reason and CJ Stroud goes off. I'll take the blame for it. I called him out, and obviously he heard about the Blue Stable. He fired it up to the team, and everybody's saying, F you, Michael, 4 eyes dork. So that's what I'm going to say. I think Gus Bradley's got to attack CJ. He's got to throw a very complicated defensive disguise at him, make him think, buy the defensive line more time to get home. And if you can get home to CJ Stroud, that's going to be a lot more time for the offense to be on the field and the defense to rest. That's going to be my third reason. That's all good stuff from us. Now let's get into the final segment of the show. Predictions. Let's go Marcus, myself, and Landon. Hold on. Actually, wait. We'll start off with Landon this time because last week we didn't listen to him. We need to hear the voice of reason. We need to go back to school. We need to take notes. Hold on. Where's my iPad right here? Let me get my iPad out. Let me open notes and let me take some notes here, okay?
According to Twitter right now, that's probably not a smart move on your part.
Oh yeah, okay. What the heck am I doing? You don't know. But anyways.
I don't know what I'm talking
You want to know so far on predictions. You want to know.
Right, you're 1-0. So let me get my my notes going here. Landon's classroom. All right, segment 2. All right, Landon, let's start us off here. I'll go second, and then Marcus will finish us off.
Yeah, I think this is a strong week, another strong week for the Colts defense. This is about consistency. Now, you've seen them dominate in spurts in Jacksonville. You've seen that defensive line really put pressure on. I think at the end they just ran out of gas because they were on the field a lot. I think this week things get figured out a little bit more. I don't think this team's quite as talented as Jacksonville is, in multiple areas. Quarterback, offensive line play was pretty good last week for Jacksonville. Houston's, like I said, missing 3 starters, and I don't think they have near the weapons Jacksonville has either. So I expect this defense to play tough. And I expect the Colts to come out and try to get, those shot plays involved. We're going to see how the defense of Houston plays them, but I think you're going to see a lot more explosive passes as opposed to kind of the dump offs you saw last week. I think they're going to open things up a little bit more week by week. So I'm actually going to take the Colts in this one. I think the Colts end up 1-1. I've got the Colts winning 24-17 in this game.
Whew. Okay. So on this one, this game I kind of tussled a little bit more than I did with last week's prediction because I love this matchup. I want to see CJ Stroud versus Anthony Richardson, 2 rookies, Shane Steichen versus D'Amico Ryans going back to the NFC Championship game. There's going to be some incentives for both of these coaches. D'Amico Ryans got embarrassed last year in Philly in the NFC Championship game. Does he have a little bit more fire under him, and is he firing this team up? This is an AFC division rival. This is a division showdown in their home opener, by the way. But I'm going to take the Colts in this game. I'm going to take them by 1 point, 21-20. I'm going to go with the Colts. Why? Because I do think at the end of the day, the defense is going to settle down and they're going to figure it out in the second half. I think they'll probably have some trouble in the first half. I think CJ Stroud's going to come out slinging. He's going to come out motivated. But I think in the second half, the defense is going to hunker down and they're going to get a win. I'm still kind of torn. Like, man, I really love D'Amico Ryans. I really love CJ Stroud, but I love Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson more. It also goes by which quarterback is more motivated to show up the other, to put the team on their back and win this game. There was another thought that I had on my mind that I think escaped me just now. But with this game, I just still tussle. I think it's still going to be a game where that's what I wanted to see. To Landon's point and what we've talked about in the show, getting those deep shots. Man, Jalen Petrie is going to be back there. And in college at Baylor, he was one of the better safeties at defending the pass longer than 30 yards. And I had to go back over the summer and find that when I was looking into the Houston Texans. Jalen Petrie is going to be that guy. He's going to be that ball hawk. Jimmy Ward, if the Colts happen to find success in the run game, hopefully they do, Jimmy Ward's going to be that guy that's probably going to be coming up in the box. So there's going to be Jalen Petrie going to be in there sitting in single high, and then he's going to pick his poison. Are you going to Michael Pittman? You going to Alec Pierce? I'm not sure. I'm probably overvaluing him more than how good he is. But, man, if you want to challenge Jalen Petrie, now remember that boy Derek Stingley's back there. So maybe you're going to try and I still love me some Derek Stingley. Still my draft crush of his draft class. Still my number 1 guy. I'm kind of torn there. Are they going to take those deep shots, and are they going to find that success? Who's going to win that matchup? But I do think that the Colts defense is going to win this one for the Colts. So that was pretty long, but give me the Colts 21-20.
I'm going off the rails here. I do have the Colts winning, but only because the defense had a great week last week, and this is a little bit lesser of competition. This is no knock in Houston because they have a bright future. I think if the defense can play any type of way last week and they actually do get some more takeaways, I think the defense can put up more points this week than they did last week. And maybe we get a special glimpse of the special teams this week too. So I'm going to say 27-13 Colts victory. I do think the Texans are going to have some drives where it just settles in field goals. And I do think they'll score eventually. So I do think the Colts defense can put up some points, and I think that'll give momentum to the offense as well. So this could be a very good game for the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm going to go 27-13.
All right. Man, guys, if there's one thing I'm excited about more than this quarterback matchup is the coaching matchup. I mean, these guys are going to have their teams ready. This is going to be, I think, a coaching clinic. And you could see why I wanted this game one. I mean, there's just so many storylines. There's so many angles that this game can be broken down to. This is going to be exciting. Last week, of course, I was just sitting there nonchalant in my man cave and just watching the game. I'm going to be on my feet the entire game for this one. I can't wait to see it. Love me some D'Amico Ryans. Love me some Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. Love these guys both. But it's going to be time Sunday. Do the Colts continue ownership of the Houston Texans, or can the Houston Texans make a statement in their home opener for D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud? We'll find out. Hopefully the Colts come back 1-1, maybe try and get some momentum going, try and see what they got. Maybe they can make that 7th seed in the playoffs. Who knows? Or go get Marvin Harrison Jr. But, hey, we're going to figure it out, okay? So like Landon said last week, it's one step closer to Marvin Harrison Jr., but do they make one step closer to a playoff seed? We'll find out Sunday. Catch us there. Again, if you're not already, subscribe to the Blue Stable on YouTube, like us on YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite Colts podcast. Other than that, guys, he is Landon. He is Marcus. I am Michael. Thank you again, and we will see y'all Sunday post-game.